Man, something interesting is brewing with the team right now, and it's one of those moves that kind of flies under the radar at first. You know how sometimes a situation doesn't look like a big deal, but the more you think about it, the more it starts to make sense? Yeah, this feels exactly like that. It's not the flashy kind of news that gets everyone hyped instantly, but there's definitely more going on here than people realize, and it could end up impacting the defense in a pretty sneaky way. But first, click the like button, and if you've been a fan for more than 20 years, write in the comments, "Go Seahawks." The Seattle Seahawks are quietly making a move that could end up having a much bigger impact than fans initially expect. And it all starts with a report that caught many people off guard. According to information shared by Adam Schefter, the Seahawks brought in veteran edge rusher Dante Fowler Jr. for a visit, a name that wasn't widely anticipated in Seattle's off-season plans, but is now gaining real traction behind the scenes. At first glance, this might look like one of those routine off-season workouts that teams conduct every year, bringing in experienced players just to evaluate depth and keep options open. But the situation here feels different. There are growing indications that this isn't just due diligence. There's a legitimate level of interest from Seattle's side, and more importantly, a real possibility that this turns into a signing once the timing aligns with the team's broader roster strategy. And timing matters here. If a deal happens, it likely won't come immediately. The Seahawks are expected to wait until after the NFL draft, potentially even closer to June 1st, to avoid interfering with compensatory pick calculations. That alone tells you this isn't a rushed or reactionary move. It's calculated, and it's part of a bigger plan. Now, let's address the obvious reaction many fans had when this news surfaced. Dante Fowler Jr. is not the splashy name that people were hoping for. When you talk about available edge rushers, fans naturally gravitate toward bigger, more explosive options like Jadeveon Clowney, Joey Bosa, or even other high-profile veterans. So yes, on the surface, this can feel underwhelming. But that doesn't mean it's the wrong move. Because when you actually break down what Fowler brings at this stage of his career, you start to see why Seattle is interested. He's not just a body. He's not just a veteran presence filling space. Fowler is still capable of generating pressure, especially in specific situations. Over the past few seasons, he has shown that he can still be effective when used correctly, particularly in pass-rushing scenarios where he can attack quickly and disrupt the quarterback. That's where his value really comes into play. This wouldn't be about making Fowler an every-down defensive end. That's not who he is anymore, and it's not what the Seahawks would ask him to be. Instead, he fits the mold of a situational weapon. Someone you bring in on 3rd and long, someone who can win early in a play and force quarterbacks into uncomfortable decisions. And when you look at Seattle's current roster, there is a clear opening for that type of role. The departure of Boy Mayfield in free agency left a noticeable gap in the edge rotation. It may not be a massive void, but it's definitely there. You can't just assume that one of the younger players will automatically step in and replicate that production. That's a risk, and the Seahawks know it. Fowler offers a potential solution that doesn't require a long-term commitment or a massive financial investment. In fact, when you compare his recent production to what Mayfield was doing, the gap isn't nearly as wide as some might think. The tackle numbers are similar, the tackles for loss are in the same range, and interestingly, Fowler has even shown stronger sack production despite playing fewer snaps. Now imagine placing that kind of player into a defense that was already operating at an elite level. This is where things get really interesting. Seattle's defensive front, anchored by players like Leonard Williams and Byron Murphy, has already proven it can dominate. Adding a situational pass rusher like Fowler into that mix could actually enhance his effectiveness even further. He wouldn't be the focal point. He'd be a complementary piece, benefiting from the attention defenses have to give to the stars around him. There's also another layer to this that shouldn't be overlooked, and that's the coaching connection. Defensive coordinator Aiden Dirty has a history with Fowler from their time in Dallas, and that familiarity matters. We've already seen a pattern of Seattle bringing in players who have prior experience with members of the coaching staff, particularly from the Cowboys system, and finding success with them. That kind of continuity can accelerate a player's impact. Fowler wouldn't be walking into a completely foreign system. He would already understand certain concepts, expectations, and techniques, which could allow him to contribute more quickly than a typical free agent signing. And beyond the on-field contributions, there's the veteran presence factor. Fowler has been through different systems, different teams, and different phases of a career. He's experienced both highs and lows, and that kind of perspective can be valuable in a locker room that's blending established stars with developing talent. He's the kind of player who understands his role and can help reinforce the culture that the Seahawks are building on defense. At the end of the day, this potential move isn't about making headlines. It's about strengthening the roster in a smart, targeted way. It's about identifying a specific need, finding a player who fits that need, and bringing him in at the right time and under the right conditions. So while it might not generate the same excitement as a blockbuster signing, there's a very real chance that Dante Fowler Jr. could become one of those under-the-radar additions that quietly makes a difference over the course of a season. And now it comes down to how you see it as a Seahawks fan. Do you view this as a smart, strategic move that fits the team's identity? Or does it still feel like Seattle should be aiming higher at the position? What do you think about the possibility of Dante Fowler Jr. joining this defense? And this is exactly where the conversation around Dante Fowler Jr. becomes more nuanced. Because if you look deeper into how the Seahawks are carhousing this defense under Mike Macdonald, it starts to feel less like a random move and more like a calculated bet on fit, familiarity, and situational impact. What stands out immediately is that Seattle is not in a position where they need Fowler to come in and carry the edge group. That responsibility already leans on the core pieces of this defensive front. What they need is reliability in specific moments, especially in passing situations where getting to the quarterback quickly can completely shift a drive. Fowler still shows that ability to win early in reps, something that doesn't always show up in basic stats, but becomes obvious when you study his usage and pressure tendencies. And here's where things get even more interesting. When Fowler was producing with the Dallas Cowboys, he wasn't doing it within an elite defensive structure. In fact, that unit had its inconsistencies, which makes his efficiency stand out even more. Translating that into a Seahawks defense that has already been described as one of the best in the league changes the context entirely. Because now you're talking about a player who doesn't need to create everything on his own. Instead, he can capitalize on one-on-one matchups, cleaner pass-rushing lanes, and offenses that are already under stress trying to contain players like Leonard Williams and Byron Murphy. That ripple effect could elevate Fowler's production beyond what people expect going into this move. Another angle that deserves attention is how Seattle is approaching competition within the roster. Bringing in Fowler isn't just about plugging a hole left by Boy Mafe, it's about refusing to hand that role to an unproven player without a fight. The Seahawks have younger options in that edge room, but relying solely on development can be risky. If those players aren't ready, the defense takes a step back. If they are ready, then bringing in Fowler only raises the level of competition and pushes everyone further. And the beauty of this situation is that Seattle doesn't lose either way. If Fowler comes in and wins that rotational spot, you've added a proven veteran who can contribute immediately. If he doesn't, it means one of the younger players stepped up and earned it, which is exactly what the coaching staff wants to see. In that scenario, Moving on from Fowler becomes a simple decision with no long-term downside. There's also a subtle but important cultural element here. The Seahawks' defensive identity under this coaching staff is being shaped by players who understand specific systems and expectations. Aiden Durda's connection to Fowler isn't just a footnote. It's a key part of why this potential signing makes sense. We've already seen Seattle tap into that Dallas pipeline, bringing in players familiar with Durda's approach and getting solid results. That kind of continuity reduces the adjustment period. It increases the likelihood that a player can contribute right away. And in a league where small margins decide games, that matters more than ever. Then there's the leadership aspect, which often gets overlooked when evaluating moves like this. Fowler has been a first-round pick, he's played across multiple teams, and he's experienced different roles throughout his career. He understands what it means to adapt, to accept a changing role, and to still find ways to contribute. That mindset can be valuable in a locker room where younger players are still figuring out their place in the league. And let's be honest about something else. Not every move is supposed to be exciting. Championship-caliber teams are built just as much on smart, under-the-radar decisions as they are on headline-grabbing signings. The Seahawks seem to understand that balance right now. They're not chasing names just for the sake of it. They're looking for players who fit specific roles within a system that's already working. So when you zoom out and look at the full picture, this potential signing starts to feel a lot more logical. It fills a need, it adds depth, it creates competition, and it aligns with the coaching staff's vision. It might not dominate headlines, but it could quietly strengthen a defense that's already operating at a high level. Now, everything comes down to execution. Will Seattle actually finalize this move after the draft? Will Fowler embrace the role that's likely waiting for him? And if he does, could this end up being one of those signings that fans initially questioned but later recognize as a key piece of the puzzle? That's what makes this situation so intriguing right now. It's not about what this move looks like today, it's about what it could become once the season starts, and the real impact begins to show. If you want to stay on top of every development like this, make sure you're subscribed to the channel, hit that like button, and don't miss the video that's on your screen right now, because the latest Seahawks updates, the ones that really matter, you're only going to find them here.